So hello, I'm in Texas this week. I'm outside the stunning home of the Dallas Cowboys, where I have had the privilege of watching Lionel Messi break an all-time world record earlier today. It's sort of weird, these noon kickoffs. You come out into the really sort of scorching sunshine, but everyone here, I don't think anyone's complaining about that. Probably not even complaining about the ticket prices. Someone is sort of scalping that was going on here over the weekend because he keeps delivering. It is like Texas is the centre of this World Cup in some respects. It's got more games than any other state. And it has this sort of showbiz element this week with Lionel Messi playing twice in Dallas. Well, we'll see if he plays against Jordan now. Those tickets could be bad value now that they're through. And we've also got Portugal, and I'm heading that way to see them in Houston on Tuesday. But yeah, I've been in Dallas for the weekend. I mean, obviously you do the things that you do here. There's Argentina jerseys everywhere. You go and have a look at the grassy knoll and the JFK stuff. And as I said, mostly around the city, there was a fan rally. It was mainly Argentines. There was some Austrians. And I did meet 6 lads from RD and a mate of theirs from Cork who really immersed themselves in the spirit. They've been saving since 2018 for this trip. So probably wishing Ireland were a part of it, but it has sort of been a real sort of festival vibe around it, and it does help when the star act turns up. But just meeting a couple of Irish people, I mean, it's something I'm doing on this trip, and while I was here in Dallas, I was able to catch up with Kevin Grogan, who I guess to people in the Irish football community, it's a name that should ring a bell. He was a member of the under-16 team that won the Euros in 1998, Brian Kerr's side. Manchester United, highly talented player, really bad luck with injury. One of those tales where, again, like the broken dreams and where's he going to go? Well, where he came is to America, where he's now living in New York. He's working in the football industry, and I suppose at a time when we're all asking questions about what this World Cup means for the game here and what it might mean for the game going forward, I thought Kevin would be a good person to catch up with, to chat about that and just chat generally about his own story. What we were talking about there, Kevin, maybe 16, 17 years ago or so, you come over here, and maybe just to explain to people, like, you know, your story has been told before. I think we met in 2013, we figured it out, and at that stage it was about how you'd come to America, got into the coaching scene. Alex Ferguson had helped you to get a reference for your visa, and you were maybe pursuing that path, and now 2026, you're sort of engaged in a slightly different side of the industry. The people talk about how football globally, American investment has pumped into it at all levels, and you're seeing a bit of that in what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, like initially, obviously coming over and coaching, that was kind of the natural progression from being a player, and setting up a supplemental kind of coaching academy and pursuing a professional kind of coaching career. But then, yeah, just morphed into a business career, really. And my first kind of break was when David Villa came over and signed for NYCFC, and his agent, Victor Onate, needed someone in New York to kind of help with all the commercial activities. And I kind of fell into that and enjoyed the kind of negotiation of the contracts and different things like that. And then from that, Andreas Iniesta approached me, and they wanted someone in America to work on their commercial deals. And that's really how it started. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. So kind of stuck with that. Yeah,
so just you now have your own sort of consulting company, which functions as a middleman, for want of a better term, in terms of been involved in various deals and transactions, and you're probably at the sharp end of seeing what's happening now in terms of, you know, US investors or investors based in the US wanting to get into clubs or wanting to buy into the European market. You're seeing a lot of that business.
Yeah,
too.
I think it's twofold. I mean, first of all, if you look at youth soccer, it's a massive business over here because it's a pay-to-play model, where when I grew up playing for Belvedere, I think it was like £1 a week. Over here, you're spending like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year to join a youth soccer club. So there's good and bad of that, but the good is it creates an industry. The bad is that some kids are kind of priced out of being able to play at an elite level, so that's a whole different issue, but it creates a business. Then you look at the kind of private equity world, which I've leaned into recently, and there's a lot of private equity groups looking to buy soccer clubs, whether that be the Premier League, you know, in France, in Italy, and here in America. And yeah, they're really leaning into that. So it's a really interesting kind of time at the moment in terms of people getting involved in the sport, both at youth level and the professional level, but it's big business.
Yeah, and do you think that this World Cup could accelerate that people in the States are now seeing? Listen, I know it's very obvious that the awareness has grown dramatically across the time you've been there, but Do you think even just a taste of some of what we're seeing around us here is going to have more people
Yeah.
looking at this?
Well, I think some people don't realize how big soccer is here in terms of
Yeah.
participation. It's obviously the biggest in the world. The standard isn't as good as Europe, but it's getting a lot better. The players are getting better. The coaching is getting better. But obviously with a World Cup coming, you have a lot of those kids that historically maybe didn't know much about soccer or were into other sports are now seeing soccer on TV. And that'll create an interest and excitement for the kind of next generation. So it's just going to grow bigger and bigger.
Yeah. So we've just been speaking before, and you were speaking about sort of the networking scene that is a big part of life here. You spoke about when you come over here, and like you've spoken about it before, you know, the broken dreams, like the career maybe you could have had, and probably grieving and coming to terms with that. And then you come here and you've made some connections here that they've changed your life in a way in terms of how it's panned out.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always say I'm not great at a lot of things, but I've always been good at networking. And, you know, when I moved over here, I really didn't have much going for myself back in Ireland. I'd kind of moved back from England, career, obviously we all know that story hadn't worked out, you know, and definitely suffering from a bit of depression at the time. But coming over to America and kind of getting the opportunity to network and meet people. And I've been really blessed to kind of be able to meet and network with some of the biggest business people in America. And learn from them. And that's really where I got my education. I mean, Mike and Brendan Moylan, two Irish-American businessmen who started Soccer.com 44 years ago as a high school project and recently sold to KKR, one of the biggest private equity firms in the world. I mean, it's an amazing story. But to be friends with both of those and to work with both of them and learn from them, and many other people. Paul Boylan, we talked about earlier from Linesight, one of the biggest client rep companies in the world. Like, he's been a mentor to me as well, and many, many others. So I've got my education from my network, and that's really helping. I think America, particularly New York, that's what it's all about, getting out there and meeting people.
Yeah, like I don't want to you beat your confidences with your friends and stuff like that, but you have mentioned you've been to Augusta a couple of times with Shane Lowry. You know, you've got to meet some very interesting people.
Yeah, well, I mean, I told you earlier, like I'm Brian Moran, who's Shane's agent, great guy. You know, he worked for me way back when on my camps, and we built a friendship. And he told me he had a friend that was good at golf that might make it, and I didn't really pay any interest. But it turned out to be Shane Lowry, and you know, been lucky to kind of get to know Shane, and great guy, and Brian's a great guy, and again, good networking and good people. And then, you know, the friends I kind of met when I first came over weren't even involved in sport. A lot of my friends that I first met were actually bartenders. They now own multiple bars in the city, and their stories are success stories. You know, Johnny and Cahill and Vinny, who owned the Westbury and the Long Hall and bars like that, and Macra and Pat, I think, are up to owning 16 bars now. The Mean Fiddler and all them. You know, so there's some great success stories there. But I think, you know, particularly in New York, working hard, being a good person and networking, it gives you a chance, you know. Yeah,
and I mean, people may see it here now. Harry Maguire was in your place last week, as you've bought into a place, the Long Acre Tavern around Times Square, and I think these quotes, I think they popped up maybe in some of the English papers over the weekend, because obviously Harry Maguire, very topical, not in the squad. But you sort of pulling a couple of your old connections together.
Yeah, I think so. You know, a lot of what my company does, KG Consulting, like we run a lot of events, and I was happy to spread the love to my friends' bars. But I got an opportunity to invest in a bar last year, so I did that, and now I bring all my events there. But yeah, we had Harry Maguire in on Thursday. We had Alan Shearer and Dion Dublin in the week before. Some brilliant nights. Bar was packed, and but Harry was an interesting one. You could hear, you know, the disappointment for not getting picked, but he was very humble and very professional about it. He really was. He really came across great. Like he wasn't bitter, but he wasn't afraid to say it. He was very disappointed as well, you know.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, for the Irish audience here, and it's something that I often would talk about in my work, and it's been written about. The volume of clubs in Ireland now that have American or North American ownership. Even when I was in Toronto, I bumped into someone who, you know, they knew someone involved with Treaty United and from the Canadian end of things. Is that a market you've looked at? Is that a market that comes across your table sometimes? Because we are seeing this now. And listen, there's been mixed experiences in Ireland. You can't get away from that. But is that something that you also encounter interesting in Irish football?
Well, I mean, the last couple of years now, I've leaned into the private equity space, because a lot of these funds, SPVs and different things like that want to invest in sports and entertainment. And although they're very smart people from a kind of financial point of view, they need someone on the ground that understands the nuts and bolts of the sports franchises. So I've looked at that, and we've looked at Ipswich and Derby and FC Metz, and there's a few Irish clubs that have come on the market, Finn Harps and Wexford, and there was Dundalk a few years ago. So we've had all of those deals on our desk, and we've looked at them all, and we continue to look at them. I mean, buying a soccer club or investing in a soccer club can be a great business, but it can be a very difficult business as well. So you've got to really do your due diligence and take your time on which ones you're going to get involved in. But it's an interesting space.
And it's going to continue. Like, do you think people are going to keep looking?
Oh, more and more. And the World Cup is going to accelerate that. Because I think a lot of these family offices that have billions and billions of dollars, they're very smart with their money, and they're, diversified in, property and different things. And the kind of sports and entertainment is nearly like a sexy investment for them. And if it's 1% of their net worth, it's nearly like a gamble, and they can kind of take a risk and not get a return straight away. So you see more of these people wanting to be involved, understanding the risk and willing to take the risk. Yeah.
I know one of the ways that you've kept in touch with the home, that there's been reunions for the under 16s.
Yeah.
I know you haven't made all of them, but you've been there. It's still a special time in your life, I'm sure, that exists in your memories.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to get to all of them. I missed the last one, unfortunately. I was at a funeral, but I was raging because I had my flights booked, and that was only recently. I think it was last year. But we've had a few. We had one many years ago with the Soccer Writers Association Award, and listen, it was a special time with Brian Kerr and Noel O'Reilly, and what a great team. And obviously Liam Miller sadly passed away, but the quality of players, Andy Reid, John O'Shea, like Liam, there was just some amazing players on that team. And you never break that bond, because we did something special, We won a European Championship,
Yeah. And do you still love the game then? Because it's funny, the game obviously broke your heart at a point, but you've now ended up, like, it's allowed you to make this life for yourself in America too.
If I'm being totally honest, I don't love watching football or soccer. I don't sit there and love it and go to the games and love it. I go to a lot of events, obviously, on the corporate side. But I love being involved in the sport, and I love the business aspect. I love cutting deals. I love the network, and I love building relationships. And I think there is a world in business where you can be very fair and create deals that everyone wins. It doesn't have to be always cutthroat. And as I said, I'm blessed just to be around so many great people. The Soccer.com piece has been amazing for me. As I said earlier, Mike and Brendan Moylan, I've been heading up kind of the New York kind of business development and event side of things. And just to be around those guys and meet them and the culture they've created in their company. I think we talked earlier, like, you get to a certain age, you just want to be around good people. So watching it, a small bit. But a lot of corporate events, I'm more going for the networking and the business, to be honest. Yeah, just a final question, like 1994 World Cup, we're 32 years on from that, and we can see that football, like soccer in the country, has evolved considerably. What's 32 more years like? What do you imagine the game being? I've seen, like in the last 16, 17 years, I've just seen the development from when I've been here, and it's just been unbelievable in terms of participation, the women's game, the facilities, the quality of coaching has got really, really good. And I just think now with this World Cup, it's just going to excel it to another level. Because the biggest problem in America in terms of winning a World Cup and producing world-class players is probably all the other sports. The best athletes in general as kids are going towards baseball, American football, and so on. But I think if America can go deep in this tournament, which I think they can do well, they're already doing well, I think it gives that next generation, like us in 88 and 90, we were all out in the fields playing, that gave us the buzz. I think if that happens this year, we'll get a generation of kids playing soccer that maybe wouldn't have, and I just think America will get better and better and better.
Okay, well, listen, it's been good catching up with you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
So yeah, that was Kevin, and I am going to catch up with a couple more Irish heads around Texas this week, although there's going to be an influx of them coming towards Friday in Houston when Pico, Lopes and Cape Verde play their final group game. And there is a very plausible set of results now, where if Spain beat Uruguay and Cape Verde draw against Saudi Arabia, or if Cape Verde just go and beat Saudi Arabia, they're going to be second. And in Miami, in the round of 32, they're going to be playing Argentina, which would be a pretty spectacular story.